Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the Beyond Addiction podcast, brought to you by Gulf Breeze Recovery. I'm Ann, and today we have two guests. Barnett Gilmer, who's the founder and CEO of Gulf Breeze Recovery, often referred to as GBR, and Joe Bailey, a very well-known author, therapist, and a longtime consultant with GBR. So, if I can start with you, Barnett, let's let everybody know just a little bit about your background and what you were doing before you founded Gulf Breeze Recovery.
I had worked at a treatment center for about 6.5 years, and anyway, decided that I wanted to, open up my own, and I wanted to do something different. And I wanted to have a program where people could see for themselves, what was going on in their life, where they, at the beginning, innocently, picked up drug, alcohol, whatever, and then of course that that eventually led to, a habit, and then of course addiction, and to see for themselves, what has happened. And so anyway, I didn't know exactly, what was out there, and so I just started looking, and I found a three principle seminar that was going on in St. Petersburg, and I went to it, and I really liked what I heard, and so they gave a book with the seminar, and I read that, and then in that process, I had a really huge insight for myself, and it was, it changed my life, and it was an insight, about my insecurity and how it had been driving me all my life, and it just made a huge difference, and I decided that that's what I wanted for a program, to help people to have their own aha moment, their own insight, even, what Bill W. would call a spiritual awakening. And so that's what we did. And of course, I was reading, and I read a book, one of Joe's first books, called The Serenity Principle, and then decided to, contact Joe, and him and I worked together to form the program. And so it's been just a huge success, and people really appreciate, what we do, and the fact that it is different, from what's out there in the mainstream, and not only is it different, but it works, and that's the main thing. That's what's important.
Right, because it works.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, talk about what you were doing before you became part of the Gulf Breeze Recovery family.
Yeah, and I think let me start with kind of picking up on what Barnett just said, because I thought it was really to the point. That when you start to have your own realizations rather than just learning a bunch of concepts, when you have what we would call an inside out transformation rather than a behavioral change, controlling your thoughts, controlling your behavior, when you have a more fundamental realization of your true nature, which is healthy, which is resilient, um, it it's kind of like it removes the driver. Barnett said that he was a very insecure person, and insecurity is a good generic term for you don't feel comfortable inside your own skin. You just feel anxious, you feel fearful, you feel worried, you lots of different negative emotions. And when you don't know where that's coming from, anything that will change that, like drugs or alcohol or sex, or it doesn't matter, you can get addicted to anything that will momentarily calm that feeling of insecurity. So I'm a psychologist by training, clinical psychologist, and I didn't really ever think I'd go in the addiction field. But when I was a young intern in psychology, I was put in charge of the addiction program at a community mental health center in Texas. And that's where I fell in love with working with people with addictions. And my mentor was an ex-Marine drill sergeant guy who was a recovered alcoholic who had had a profound spiritual awakening that Barnett just referred to, that Bill W. had. And he was the most joyful, happy, go with the flow guy I had never met. And so that's what drew me to work in the addiction field. But the addiction field was really all about a lot of, you know, identifying with your disease, calling yourself an alcoholic, a drug addict, which seemed to be the best thing going. You know, AA, NA, all these different 12-step programs were kind of what treatment centers were built around. So for about a decade, I worked in that disease model. And that was when I met Sydney Banks, because I was at that point burned out, discouraged by the results, worn out by the kind of painful treatment process that I put my patients through, but also put me through as a therapist. And so when I met Sydney Banks, and I wasn't really looking for it, but what he said was so true and so profound that I knew he was onto something that would transform the field of psychology, addictionology, and many other areas. And so it transformed the way I worked with patients. They started getting well rather quickly. Therapy became short term. It was more educational. It didn't require going back and reliving the horrible past and, you know, counting all your defects and looking at what's wrong with you. Instead, it awakened this innate mental health, this resilience, this serenity, if you will. And so as a result of that, my burnout went away. My results with my patients got transformed. Pretty soon I had so many patients, I didn't know what to do with them. So I started a mental health center and started training other therapists, and it just kind of mushroomed from there, and been writing books about this and traveling around the globe teaching these principles for the last 40 years. So somewhere along the line, I got a call from this guy, Barnett and Debbie Trent. They said, we're going to start this treatment center, and we'd really like the three principles to be the foundation of it. Will you help us design the program and train the staff? And it was like, oh, well, this is a dream come true for me. So that was whenever, how many years ago was that, Barnett, that we began?
11, easy, closer to 12, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. But the whole thing started with finding the right people to work there that were mentally healthy and that were open, and then teaching them these principles so that they could get that for themselves first, because addiction counselors are typically very burned out and stressed and negative and kind of cranky. And so finding a way to keep the staff healthy and then help guide the clients to that, that was our goal. So we designed the program around that philosophy, or that paradigm based on psychological principles that are behind how we create our unique human experience, each of us. And so that's what all the programs and various, you know, recreational therapy and classroom and readings and counseling and group therapy and classes, all the programs, that the way that it goes out at Gulf Breeze, it really has created a model. And so that's gotten passed on to many other treatment centers as well around this country and other places around the world. So that's my background.
Very good. One of the words that both of you said, and I'd like you to speak to this for me, Barnett, is the word results, because so many times the guests to whom I have spoken have been to many centers, many programs all over the United States and anywhere, and yet they'll say they've been to 3, they've been to 8, they've been to, and here they are speaking to me at Gulf Breeze Recovery. Can you talk about that for me? What is the difference? What did they discover at Gulf Breeze they didn't find anywhere else?
I think one of the big things, you know, is the thing that we tell people when they come in, and most don't believe us, which is understandable. But that they're not broken, that they have everything within themselves, to overcome addiction and to live a happy, healthy life, both mentally and physically. And so that's kind of a eye opener, if you will. And so but it plants a seed, it kind of it grows an interest, if you will, kind of thing. And so what we're doing is we're trying to help them to see the health within themselves. Okay. And just like I think Joe had mentioned, not really trying to cure a disease so much, but having them see the health within themselves, and that they can move forward with their life, that they have it within themselves to do that. It's just, I don't even like to use the word misplaced, but it's just been forgotten, if you will, maybe somewhere along the line. But I would even argue, when I say forgotten, that everybody, has that, innate, wisdom that is always speaking to them, but just kind of whispers to them. Okay. And they're so used to overriding that it becomes second nature. And, just something simple as, maybe, wanting to meet up with some, using buddies or whatever, or drinking buddies. And so there may be something, telling them not to do it, but, of course, override and go do it. And maybe the next thing you know, something happens, and, get a, DUI or whatever. And, it happens, but that's what we do. We ignore, because we're conditioned to ignore that wisdom that's within us. And so we try to help people to understand that, and to see what that actually is, that there's a difference maybe between the intellect and that wisdom that's there. And so, yeah, that's a big difference in what they see. And, a lot of people just, will reject, the standard treatment model that's out there based on the 12 steps of AA, which, I always tell people there's nothing wrong with the program, and it doesn't make anything wrong with the people who maybe, don't accept the program or whatever. It just may not be a good fit. And that, they've been to 3, 5, 15, it's incredible. But what's even more incredible to me is that even though a person could go to 15 different treatment centers, in essence, in most cases, they've only been exposed to one program. Okay, only one. And so they're all, we're based on the same tenets of the 12 steps of AA, and it just wasn't a good fit for them. And so, they just see something different here.
Very good. Joe, I think you want to add to that.
Yeah, I would say that there's a paradigm difference between the disease model, where you're treating the disease. It's a medical model, which most healthcare and insurance and everything is based on diagnosing and treating the illness. Whereas what we're doing at Gulf Breeze is a health recovery model. So it's helping people to identify with their innate health, their innate wisdom, their innate capacity for insight, for clear thinking. And so when you help people, when that's the focus, you take away the shame, you take away the guilt, you take away the resistance factor in treatment. And instead you're pointing people back, not that we don't talk about when they're off track, or confront behavior, or, it's not like you're in this Pollyannish world. You can be very honest with people, but seeing beyond their symptoms, beyond their behavior, to this innate quality of resilience, mental health, serenity, and help nourish that. It's like my granddad was a farmer, and he got an education in the 1800s to be an agronomist, the study of soil and the study of horticulture. So he knew the principles of how you grow plants, what gets in the way, what toxins, what the bad soil, not enough sunlight, too much moisture, not enough. And so he knew that a sick plant had the innate capacity to be at its full potential. You just had to put it in the right soil, the right amount of sunlight, the right amount of fertilizer or whatever, and then the full potential of that plant would come out. So the science of horticulture is all about growing. Now, the science of addiction has been about identifying with the most negative quality at the lowest point of your life versus this inner complete package of wellness that we call resilience. So that's what we keep pointing people back to through all the educational materials, the counseling, the coaching, group therapy, is to help people re-identify with who they really are, rather than this false concept called the ego, the personality. Personality means mask in the Greek. So you're not your mask, you're the actor that's wearing the mask, and you can take it off. You don't have to identify with it. So it doesn't mean people don't need detox. It doesn't mean you deny where the personal is at. You meet people where they're at. You help their physical health, their nutrition, but then the primary goal is to help them identify with this core or essence of health. And that's what the whole program, to me, it's a paradigm shift for the treatment of addictions. And it's happening.
Very good explanation, because I can attest, when I first joined this group, I referred to someone as a client, and I didn't say patient, I said client, but I was quickly corrected to say, no, they're guests. And just using that word elevates the person there to something that you are helping and serving. And you talked a little bit about your selection process. Can you go in, Barnett, a little further for me on what you and Joe both refer to as the health of the helper? Because they're the people that you train to help these guests that have come to your facility.
One of the things that, when people go to treatment, um, and, one of the things that they'll see sometimes is that, what I'd call maybe a duplicate message. And that is that, the staff is talking the talk, but maybe not walking the walk, if you will. And they see it. I mean, they are looking, and their meter, if you will, is high, and they're looking to make sure that that they're, I always call it the BS meter, that they're really looking hard to see if what's going on is really real or not. And so it's real important to make sure that the staff is walking the walk and talking the talk. Okay. And that's the health of the helper. And when I say staff, I'm not talking about, just the therapist. I'm talking about, the support staff, the cleaning staff, the kitchen administration, everybody that, we ourselves are healthy, because you cannot give away something that you don't have. And, you can try to fake it, but people catch that. You cannot fake it, okay, and be successful. And so, yeah, they got to see, that what we're saying and what we're doing, are the same. And so it's real important to make sure that staff understand the program themselves, and to understand, you know, what, what's been driving them, if you will, because we all have, our certain, issues, if you will. And so instead of having this hierarchical component, if you will, where people are here and we're up here and you're to listen to us and that kind of stuff, it's kind of more of, we're more in it together, okay? Because we all are doing the best we can with what we know at the time. Now, obviously, we do have things to offer people, and we do. But it's just a different way of looking at it, and it's a different feel, if you will, compared to most facilities.
Right.
Can I just piggyback on what Barnett
Yes,
just,
please.
because I was a professor at an addictions training program in the Twin Cities here where I live. And part of my job was when they were doing internships, I would go around to the various treatment centers. We have as many treatment centers as there are Starbucks in Minnesota. This is kind of the land of 10,000 treatment centers. And you could, when you walked into a treatment center, you could feel when you walk in the door the negativity or the health, because there's a feeling that's created by the state of mind of the staff. How people greet you at the door. You can tell if it's genuine or not, or if they're just doing what they've been told to say on a card. And so that feeling, the thing that the principles, that philosophy, that understanding gives the staff at GBR and me is an ability to not live in that positive feeling all the time, but to recognize when I'm off, when I've caught up in my thoughts. And so we all are human. We get caught up in our thinking, the past habits or whatever. But when you have this awareness, this consciousness, that it's not coming from out there, it's coming from a misunderstanding or a misuse of your mind in that moment. And so it self-corrects you and you get back in that positive feeling, that feeling of compassion, love and understanding, better listening. So the state of mind of the staff, from the janitor to the nurses to the CEO, Barnett, and everybody in between, forms a feeling that people can feel is therapeutic or toxic. And that's what I think is an intangible thing you can't quantify. But when you walk in a group where you have that genuine feeling of understanding and compassion, it teaches more than all the lectures. It's the walking the talk, as Barnett said. It's the not just talking the talk, but walking the talk. And so that's what we hope to do at Gulf Breeze, is keep that. And it's an ongoing process. We go up and down, because you can get caught up in insurance, the licensure test that's coming up or evaluation that you're going through. And so we're human. We get caught up in our own thoughts, but the reset button is big here at GBR. You just push that reset button. You go, oh, we call it flat forehead therapy sometimes, because they're always going, oh, I can't believe it's my thinking again. But it always comes back to how we're creating our experience through the power of thought, the power of consciousness, and the power of mind to create our experience. So we're all human. We all lose it and we can regain it. But when you have a foundation understanding, it keeps the ship afloat even in bad storms.
Exactly. And speaking
You've
of,
had your share there.
yes, yes, bad storms. Speaking of bad storms, for anyone embarking on a decision to go into a rehab, the first hurdle I'm sure they're concerned about is detox. So often that's part of what needs to happen before someone can be receptive. And so, Barnett, can you talk a little bit about that as it's experienced at GBR?
Sure. I'd like to start off by saying, we talk about health and, how we have that innate health. But yeah, there's no doubt, people who come to us when they first come to us are sick. I mean, they are, and they need help. And so obviously the first stage for most people anyway who come in is the detox. And what we know is that a person's total program, okay, from point A, to point B or point Z, if you will, of course, there's never an end, it's always, we're a work in progress as humans. But, the detox sets the stage, okay? And if a person can go through detox and at least feel that the person or that people are taking care of them, that are considerate of them, and of course to make the detox process as comfortable as possible, that goes so far and it sets the stage, for the rest of the program for them. And the beauty about our medical director, David Espenscheid, is that he's been with us since we've opened, and he's been there, done that. He has suffered with addiction himself. He's over 20 years clean, but he still understands what people are going through, and he tells people all the time, I've been on your side of the bed. I understand what you're going through, and I'm here to let you know that we're going to get you through this, and we're going to get you through this safely and as comfortably as possible. And it makes just a huge difference. Our the surveys that we get, that kind of stuff, our medical department, the nurses, all that, I mean, just continuously receive top marks, because they genuinely care about what's going on and the guests who come in here.
Very good. Joe mentioned the flat head syndrome, and what I was going to tell you, Joe, is when Barnett was talking about the surveys, I had mentioned this to him last week, that we always get these stellar, and it's so nice to hear that, and the staff loves to read them. But we got one that wasn't, and it in the range of stars, it was a 1-star versus a 5-star. And of course, I couldn't not look at that one. My gosh. And his complaint was that he learned that he had it in him all the time, that all he needed to get well and to get sober, he always had it. And that was his 1-star, that he had it, and he didn't know it. So that was his. Can you speak to that thing, like, it, oh my God, if I could just control this thought, I can control more.
Who are you asking?
For you, Joe. I was talking to you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, dear.
Yeah. Yeah, we're my mentor always said we're one thought away from mental health and one thought away from mental illness. Because whatever we're thinking in the moment is what's creating our experience. So you can have 10 people at the same movie or at the same party, and some will say it was the best party I've ever been to. They'll say I was completely bored. I couldn't stand that person. First thing when I walked in the door, they blah, 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 and that ruined my night. So everybody's having a different experience at the same movie of life. And that's brought to you by thought, because moment to moment, you're having a thought experience. You can't experience reality except through the power of thought and consciousness. And without that, you're blank, you're dead. So human beings are all having a different experience because we're all thinking different. But when you have this awareness, this little light bulb that can go off, and you can realize, oh, I'm having a thought experience. I'm feeling my thinking, not what I'm thinking about. That's transformational, because it brings the power back to you rather than trying to control the outside. And that's where people get lost. They're always trying to find the right drug to make them feel good, or the right relationship, or the right job, or the right this, or the right that. And not that we shouldn't be selective, but nothing out there is going to make you happy. Your happiness, your serenity, your state of mind is an inside out job. And that's the paradigm difference. You're not just a product of your past, your genetics, your environment, your family. All of those are factors, but the real power is your awareness of that. That when you can be aware in the moment that instead of blaming others or the circumstances, you can see your power. So it's an empowering thing to see that whatever is going on, like my latest book, I tell stories about people in prison or people in prisoner camps in World War II who found the serenity, even though they were in Auschwitz. They survived 5 years in Auschwitz. Their resilience was strong, even though their bodies was weak. So regardless of circumstances, we can find this innate mental health, this serenity that Bill W. talked about through his spiritual awakening. It's there for all of us to see. And that's the focus of this program that's unique. It's pushing or pointing people back to that rather than to their problem. Not ignoring the problem. As Barnett said, we treat the body, the mind, and the soul of every person that comes there. We educate. We meet people where they're at, but it's all pointing people back to their inner power to create their experience. And that's a game changer.
Very good. And yet, go ahead, Barnett. You wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'm just piggyback what Joe said, but I like to tell people that what we're doing here, not trying, but what we are doing here is helping people to be captains of their own ship instead of being blown around like a tumbleweed, whichever way the circumstantial winds takes us. And that's what we're conditioned to do. That's what our conditioning from when we were really young, and so it's an innocent thing, and we all have done it, and we all still do it. Just like what Joe said, that sometimes we have to, that's
Flat forehead therapy.
Once we do that, then we kind of right the ship and become the captain again. But we all get blown around ever so often. But the beauty is that at least now we can catch it and have that top of mind awareness to catch it.
Right. And you both referred to how that you need to be reminded and recentered. So can you talk to how you work with your graduates? I mean, you're in the program and you're learning it, but it has to be, now you're outside, back in the real world with all the stimuli and all the previous pitfalls that had you before. How do you help people maintain their sobriety once they've left the program?
And one of the big things is that when you leave the facility and you go back out, number one, the people that and your loved ones and stuff, they haven't learned what you learned about yourself. It's they're still in at the level that they were when you went to treatment. And it's so easy to get caught back up into your conditioning, what you've been conditioned all your life, and it just kind of sneaks up, almost like addiction does. You start using, and the next thing you know, you go, how in the heck did I get here? What in the world? And it's the same thing, that all of a sudden, you'll go back to your previous conditioning and wondered, how did I get here? And so it's important, to do the aftercare and to stay in touch. That we offer an aftercare program where we'll have a person meet with a what we call a three principal educator, that type thing, and have some sessions with them and to just keep it going, to keep reminding them of where where they are, and that it all points back once again to me, even though it really seems, that it's out there, and we all get caught up in it, every single one of us. And so it's important to maintain and to keep that going. And then the other thing is also to be aware that it's really easy when you leave to want to I call it kind of preach the word, but to talk to your loved ones and your friends, about what you've learned, and want them to get to understand, and it becomes kind of almost important that they understand, what you've learned. But maybe just allow them to see in you, you know, there is something different going on here, you know, and then out of curiosity, when they see that, they're going to go, man, what did you guys, what did y'all learn over there? What happened? And then that opens the door for them to maybe to help their relatives, their friends, to maybe to understand, what you went through, and then of course helps them, obviously to raise their awareness, that kind of thing. But yeah, the aftercare is so important. I cannot stress how important it is, to keep ourselves on track. And I'm going to put myself as an example here. I'll talk to Joe, every so often, because I get off track, and he helps point me back to myself. Sometimes I don't like that. Me, what are you talking about? But at the end of the day, it's the right thing, because it's true. And the beauty about it is that hey, I can change me, I can't change the outside world.
Perfect. Joe, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the other part about the aftercare, obviously the coaching you get from the aftercare counselors is a great way to touch base again when you get caught up. But also there's a wealth of materials available, podcasts and videos and books, and lots of materials that are really rich in explaining this in different ways and in every language. I think they're in 50 languages now around. So there's a lot of supportive materials from three principles educators all over the planet who, people hear differently from different people. Certain voices will speak to them better than others. So there's a lot of help available out there. It certainly wasn't there when I was first learning this. There was no books. There was nothing written about it. It was just all brand new. And now there's a lot. So it's the aftercare, one-on-one counseling the guests get, but also there's support groups, online support groups once a week. There are other groups available that people can find, going to the Three Principles websites. There's just a infinite resources available for people who come to Gulf Breeze, in addition to the staff at Gulf Breeze.
Yeah, and every one of the guests that I have the opportunity to speak with, it has been exposed to a very extensive library, Barnett, of books that you have available while they're in the procedure. And they all have their favorite book, Joe. They all have the one that spoke to them. And speak to that library. And of course, Joe's part of that library.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have my favorite, the one that I really had my insight, just reading it, and just kind of planted the seed for me. And that's really what it's about, is planting the seed, and having a person, having things to grow, and allowing a person to have their own insight. But yeah, lots of books to choose from. We have part of the program is that we have this 1 hour, we call it reflection, where a person will read and reflect on what they're reading, and they can select their own book from the library. And when people first come here, we give them 3 books to start with. Okay. And obviously one of them is Joe's The Serenity Principle. But we want them to start getting familiar, with the program and what we're trying to help lead them to. And so the library is like I say, you'll have plenty of reading material. People have plenty of reading material when they come here, because it's important that they read about the program and find something that speaks to them.
Right. You must hear from people all the time, Joe, on the Serenity Principle.
Yes, I do. I've written many other books, but that's the book that I hear from people most about. My first book. Uh,
Yes, and what is the basic premise?
well, like we've just been talking about, really, it's that we are not broken. Um, that who we are is this part of us that can't be damaged, tarnished, only covered up. And that's the central message. And then the second part of it is, well, how do we create our unique reality, our unique experience of life through these 3 principles? How do we, without knowing it, create our experience? And then now that you know where your experience is coming from, how do you use that understanding not to judge yourself or get down on yourself? Oh, it's just in my thinking, but to see your innocence and to see that that's just part of the human experience, is to get caught up in conditioned thinking. But then there's this other kind of thinking that is deeper, that's called insight, wisdom, common sense. Um, that that is it's like the mainframe computer that we're all connected to. Even though we got our little laptops here, we're connected to this worldwide web, universal web of knowledge. And we just have to learn how to use our laptops, our cell phones, to to connect to that, because it's in all of us. The wisdom is in every human being, no exceptions. I think of people I've worked with that were on Skid Row for years, that had many near-death experiences, that were somehow miraculously still alive. One guy, a Native American guy, who was hit by a snowplow because his body was frozen in a snowbank in Minnesota. His body popped out on the highway. They thought he was dead, brought him to the ER to get rid of the body, basically, and they brought him back. And he ended up in a 3 Principles treatment center. And he had had a life of unbelievable sexual and physical abuse and alcoholism and drugs and poverty and you name it. And he came back to life fully and recovered fully. And so stories like that give people hope. It's just that, not that's an extreme example, but it just sometimes showing the extreme example. If it can happen for that person, maybe it can happen for me. That opens the mind by feeling a sense of hope. And hope is the beginning point for any treatment. You don't have hope, your mind's closed. But when you begin to feel hope, maybe because of how you were treated by the person in detox, or the person who did your intake, or the person that greeted you at the front desk, they didn't treat you like everybody in your family's been treating you, or your coworkers, because they've given up on you. They're treating you as a human being with full potential. And when you experience that, it opens your heart and opens your mind. Well, maybe this will be different. Maybe I can change. And that's step 1, is hope. And that's where we if someone doesn't have hope, their mind's still closed. So you always start with building that rapport, that relationship with each of the guests, and helping them feel comfortable and at ease and not feel defensive. Then their mind can start to open. And then they get their own insights. My insights aren't going to help them unless they have an insight about my insight that's theirs. So it's really that power to change is within every human being.
Yeah, that was very powerful. What do you want to leave people to remember, Barnett, as they're listening to this podcast or on watching it on YouTube? What's the message you want to make sure they get?
The same thing, hope. I mean, that's what it's about. Even for those who have experienced, just horrendous trauma, you know, eh, just all kinds of things that we go through as humans, and horrible things. Even for those who have done things that we're, certainly not proud of. Okay. There's hope. We're not our, we're not our circumstances. Okay. We're not our story. We're not our trauma. We're not uh, the things that we've done in the past. That's not who we are. Okay. And so we can move beyond that. Okay. And so, yeah, there is hope. There's hope for those that have been to 15 different treatment centers. Okay. There's hope for those who have been, through terrible things. That there's hope to recover and to live a happy life. It can be done. It just at that time maybe doesn't seem like it could be done. Even for the person suffering with addiction, and of course with their families. And so yeah, there definitely is hope, and we see it all the time, all the time.
Oh, very good. My biggest takeaway from listening to both of you is this elevation from what is normally described as a person in an addictive state who's broken and damaged and diseased and all these awful words. And now they're referred to as, Joe said, very intelligent. You call them a guest at GBR, and now you're giving them hope. Those are elevations that are not often and not commonly used in this profession. And it's wonderful to hear. Is there anything else that you all both wanted to say before we finish today that I didn't ask you or that you wanted to make sure got mentioned? Well, I think that silence says it.
Yeah, I think that we've said it all,
I
Barnett.
think so.
Do you have anything else to add?
Did you have anything, Barnett?
Yeah, it's just uh, somebody watching this podcast, feel free to call us, and we'll tell you, give you more details about the program, that kind of stuff. But yeah, never lose hope, because it's there. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, but it's just incredible, the transformation that we see. One of the big things that we'll say sometimes is when a person, is starting to have a transformation, and it has a transformation, is that we'll jokingly go, now, who is this person? Because it's just the difference between the person that came in to when they had their own transformation is it's astounding. And it happens, and it just takes time. It takes time. That's the one thing I guess I would say, that it's our program is a 56-day program, and the reason for it is because it takes time. There is a process, and but it's so well worth it at the end.
Very good. Well, thank you both. Talk to you again soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.